our shirt on Teespring.
On April 2, 2025, a sunny spring day in Washington, D.C., the city was abuzz with an unusual energy. The cherry blossoms were in full bloom, painting the Capitol in shades of pink and white, a stark contrast to the serious undertones of the day's events. President Donald Trump stood before a podium in the White House Rose Garden, a familiar setting for many of his most significant announcements. The air crackled with anticipation. Journalists from around the world had gathered, their cameras and microphones poised to capture every word. This was no ordinary press conference. The atmosphere was charged with a sense of impending change, a feeling that something monumental was about to unfold. Trump, known for his dramatic pronouncements, had already dubbed this date Liberation Day. It was a term that resonated with his supporters and intrigued his critics. The world watched as he prepared to unveil a sweeping overhaul of U.S. trade policy, a move that promised to shake the foundations of international trade. This was a move with the potential to rewrite the rules of global commerce, affecting economies far and wide. Trump's language was forceful, his tone unwavering. He spoke with the confidence of a man who believed he was on a mission to correct historical wrongs. He spoke of a national emergency, a crisis of American jobs lost and industries hollowed out by unfair trade practices. His words painted a picture of a nation under siege. This, he declared, was the day America would take back its economic destiny. It was a bold statement, one that promised a new era of economic independence. Gone were the days of multilateral trade agreements and diplomatic negotiations. Trump was charting a new course, one that would prioritize American interests above all else. Trump's message was clear. America would now act unilaterally, using tariffs as its weapon of choice. It was a strategy designed to protect American jobs and industries. The centerpiece of Trump's Liberation Day announcement was a bold, two-tier tariff structure. It was a plan that had been in the works for months, meticulously crafted to maximize impact. First, a baseline 10% tariff would be slapped on virtually all imports from every corner of the globe, sparing only Canada and Mexico. This was just the beginning of his ambitious plan. This blanket tariff, effective immediately, sent shockwaves through global markets. Financial analysts scrambled to assess the potential fallout. It was a clear signal that Trump was done playing by the old rules. He was ready to disrupt the status quo in a big way. But this was just the beginning. Trump had more in store, a second wave of tariffs designed to punish specific countries he deemed guilty of particularly egregious trade practices. Trump had more in store, a second wave of tariffs designed to punish specific countries he deemed guilty of particularly egregious trade practices. These were not just economic measures, they were political statements. These reciprocal tariffs, as he called them, would target approximately 60 nations, each selected based on their trade practices and economic policies. With rates calibrated to offset what Trump considered their unfair advantages, these tariffs were designed to level the playing field and restore American economic dominance. The specifics of the reciprocal tariffs were as audacious as they were complex. These tariffs were not just numbers on a page, they represented a fundamental shift in how the United States engaged with its trading partners. The intricate details of these tariffs were meticulously crafted to send a clear message to the world. China, long in Trump's crosshairs, faced the brunt of his wrath with a staggering 34% tariff. This move was seen as a direct challenge to China's growing economic influence and was intended to curb what Trump perceived as unfair trade practices. The European Union, another frequent target of Trump's ire, was hit with a 20% levy. This was part of a broader strategy to renegotiate trade deals that Trump believed were disadvantageous to the United States. Japan found itself staring down a 24% tariff wall. This was a significant escalation in trade tensions, as Japan had been a long-standing ally of the United States. These were just a few examples from a long list of nations targeted by Trump's trade offensive. Each country had its own unique set of tariffs, reflecting the administration's view of their trade practices. These reciprocal tariffs, set to take effect on April 9th, were carefully calculated, Trump insisted, to level the playing field. The administration argued that these measures were necessary to protect American jobs and industries. Each country's tariff rate was based on Trump's assessment of their unfair trade practices, ranging from currency manipulation to intellectual property theft. The administration claimed that these practices had long gone unchecked to the detriment of the U.S. economy. Whether these accusations were grounded in reality was a matter of fierce debate, but one thing was certain: Trump was determined to upend the global trade order. His approach was both bold and controversial, sparking intense discussions both domestically and internationally. The sheer scope of Trump's tariff regime was unprecedented in modern history. Never before had such a comprehensive set of trade barriers been implemented by a U.S. president. Never before had a U.S. president imposed such sweeping trade barriers, affecting such a wide range of goods and countries. The impact was immediate and far-reaching, disrupting established trade routes and agreements. The global trading system, painstakingly built over decades, was suddenly thrust into turmoil. Long-standing alliances were tested, and new economic realities began to take shape. Allies and adversaries alike were left scrambling to assess the damage and plan their response. The uncertainty created by these tariffs led to a flurry of diplomatic activity and economic strategizing. The implications of Trump's actions were far-reaching, with the potential to ripple through every sector of the global economy. From stock markets to supply chains, the effects were felt almost immediately. From consumer goods to raw materials, from manufacturing to agriculture, the impact of these tariffs would be felt far and wide. Industries that relied on international trade were particularly vulnerable. Businesses large and small braced for the uncertainty, while economists struggled to model the potential fallout of this unprecedented trade war. The long-term consequences remained to be seen, but the immediate disruption was undeniable. Even amidst the sweeping nature of his tariff pronouncements, Trump did carve out some exceptions. Certain goods, deemed essential to the U.S. economy or national security, were spared the full brunt of the tariff hammer. These exemptions offered a glimpse into the strategic calculations underpinning Trump's trade agenda. Energy products, for instance, were notably absent from the list of targeted goods. This exemption reflected America's growing energy independence and the strategic importance of maintaining access to affordable energy sources. With the U.S. now a net exporter of oil and natural gas, Trump was loath to disrupt these vital energy flows. Certain minerals deemed not available in the United States in sufficient quantities were also granted a reprieve from the tariffs. This exemption highlighted the delicate balance Trump was attempting to strike between his America First rhetoric and the realities of global supply chains. For all his talk of economic independence, Trump recognized that certain raw materials remained essential imports for key U.S. industries. These exemptions, however, did little to soften the blow of Trump's overall tariff offensive. The vast majority of goods imported into the United States were still subject to the new tariffs, and the exemptions themselves were often criticized as arbitrary and politically motivated. Trump's rationale for this dramatic escalation in trade tensions rested on several key pillars, each deeply intertwined with his America First worldview. This approach was not just a policy, but a fundamental shift in how the United States engaged with the world economically. At the heart of his argument lay the conviction that the United States had been taken advantage of in the global trading system for far too long. He believed that the existing trade agreements were skewed against American interests, leading to a loss of jobs and economic stagnation. First and foremost, Trump pointed to the persistent U.S. trade deficit, a gaping chasm between imports and exports that had widened for decades. This deficit, he argued, was not just a number but a clear indicator of the economic imbalance that was harming American workers and industries. He brandished the previous year's $1.2 trillion trade deficit as evidence of this imbalance, a stark symbol of American jobs and wealth flowing overseas. This, in his view, was a direct result of unfair trade practices and poorly negotiated deals. These tariffs, he argued, were essential to stemming this bleeding of American economic might. By imposing tariffs, Trump aimed to protect American industries from foreign competition and incentivize companies to keep their operations within the United States. Beyond the trade deficit, Trump railed against what he perceived as unfair trade practices by other nations. He saw these practices as deliberate strategies to undermine the U.S. economy and gain an unfair advantage in the global market. He accused China of currency manipulation, intellectual property theft, and forced technology transfers. These accusations were central to his justification for the trade war, as he believed that China was not playing by the rules and was exploiting the U.S. for its own gain. He chastised the European Union for its protectionist agricultural policies and regulatory barriers. These policies, according to Trump, created an uneven playing field that disadvantaged American farmers and exporters. These practices, he argued, put American businesses at a competitive disadvantage and justified his aggressive response. He believed that by confronting these issues head-on, he could restore fairness and reciprocity to international trade. Underpinning these economic arguments was a deeper, more visceral belief that America's strength and security were intrinsically linked to its economic dominance. For Trump, economic power was synonymous with national power, and any threat to the former was a threat to the latter. Trump's worldview left no room for compromise or concessions in the realm of trade. He saw the global economic landscape as a battlefield where only the strongest could thrive, and he was determined to ensure that the United States emerged victorious. For him, it was a zero-sum game, where any nation that benefited from trade with the United States was, by definition, taking advantage. This perspective drove his aggressive trade policies and his unwavering commitment to reshaping the global economic order in America's favor. As we move forward, we delve into the predictions and early tremors that have started to shake the political landscape. Experts are already speculating on the long-term implications, and well, the atmosphere is charged with anticipation. Some believe this could mark a significant shift, while others remain skeptical. But one thing is certain: the coming days will be crucial in shaping the future. As the dust settled from Trump's Liberation Day speech, the international community began to react. China and Brazil, two of the world's largest economies, were quick to voice their concerns. They argued that the new policies would disrupt global trade and harm their own economic interests. The tension was palpable, and the world watched closely. The implications of Trump's speech were not just immediate, they hinted at a long-term strategy. Analysts speculated that this move was part of a broader plan to reassert American dominance in global trade. It was a high-stakes game, one that would require patience, resilience, and perhaps a bit of luck. The world braced itself for what was to come. As the days turned into weeks, the impact of the new tariffs began to be felt. Some praised the bold move, seeing it as a necessary step to protect American jobs and industries. Others, however, warned that it could lead to a legacy of isolationism and economic hardship. The debate raged on with no clear consensus in sight. The uncertainty surrounding the new trade policies cast a long shadow over the global economy. Businesses and investors were on edge, fearing the onset of trade wars that could destabilize markets and economies. The specter of conflict loomed large, and the world could only wait and see how the situation would unfold.